What happens when a traffic stop turns into a power game? He thought it was just another black driver. But when the truth came out, the road went silent. It was one of those mornings that made you thankful to be alive. Crisp air, sunlight slicing through clouds like gold, and the hum of tires on open asphalt. Marcus Daniels gripped the leather wheel of his black Mercedes S-Class, the engine purring like a lazy lion under the hood. He wasn't a man to flaunt wealth, not his style, but when you worked 14-hour shifts for years and clawed your way up from nothing to CEO of your own logistics company, you damn sure earned the right to enjoy a smooth ride. He wasn't even in a rush. That was the irony. For once, Marcus had cleared his schedule. Today was about picking up his daughter, Ava, from college. Her first semester down, grades shining like a new dime. He had balloons in the trunk, her favorite snacks in the passenger seat, and a playlist of old-school R&B ready to roll. It was going to be a good day. At least, that's what he thought. As he cruised down I-85, something snagged his attention on the shoulder. A silver sedan, hazard lights blinking like a heartbeat in distress. Hood popped, steam curling. A woman stood beside it, phone raised, pacing in frustration. Marcus glanced at the clock. Plenty of time. And truth? His mama raised him better than to let somebody bake on the side of the road while he rolled by pretending not to see. He eased onto the shoulder, hazards flashing. The woman turned, startled at first, then relieved when she saw him step out. "Car trouble?" he asked, voice deep, warm. She nodded, strands of chestnut hair whipping in the wind. "Flat tire, and of course my roadside assistant says an hour, maybe more." Marcus popped a half smile. "An hour? They movin' by horse and buggy?" She laughed, the sound shaky but grateful. "Feels like it." "No worries. I got you," Marcus said. He popped his trunk, revealing a pristine toolkit because, unlike some folks, he believed in being ready for life's curveballs. As he knelt by the car, loosening lug nuts with practiced ease, he caught the woman watching him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Not judgmental, just curious. Maybe because men in tailored coats didn't usually change tires on the side of the interstate. "You didn't have to stop," she said softly. He shrugged. "Yeah, well, somebody's got to keep chivalry on life support." She laughed again, tension melting. 10 minutes later, the spare was on, the jack packed away, and Marcus wiped his hands on a rag from his trunk. "There you go. Safe to roll till you hit a shop," he said, straightening. "Thank you," she said, pressing a hand to her chest, like the gratitude was too big to hold. "Really, most people just drive by." "Most people ain't me," Marcus replied with a grin. He tipped an imaginary hat, slid back behind the wheel, and pulled off, merging into traffic with the quiet satisfaction that comes from doing the right thing without expecting applause. He didn't know it yet, but the applause was the last kindness he'd hear that day. The blue and red lights hit him like a slap. They flared in his rearview mirror not 5 minutes later, slicing through the sunlight, turning the smooth hum of his drive into the sharp staccato of adrenaline. Marcus blinked, frowned. Speedometer. Clean. Signal use. Perfect. Plates. Legit. His car? Registered, insured, inspected. Still, the cruiser hugged his bumper like a shadow with teeth, siren whooping in short bursts that felt more like commands than requests. "Seriously?" Marcus muttered under his breath as he eased toward the shoulder, indicator clicking like a metronome for dread. He rolled to a stop, shifted to park, and took a slow breath, tapping the wheel with 2 fingers. His pulse thudded in his ears, but his face? Calm. because this wasn't his first rodeo. He knew the drill. Hands visible. No sudden moves. Yes, sir. No, sir. Smile that didn't show teeth, because some folks see those as threats. And that's the thing that burned. He hadn't done a damn thing wrong, but his body was already in survival mode. The door of the cruiser swung open, and out stepped Officer Bradley Hayes, mid-40s, buzz cut, chest puffed like a bird looking to prove something. His mirrored shades flashed as he strode up, boots crunching gravel, one hand resting lazy but ready on the butt of his holstered Glock. Marcus rolled down the window, let the cool air rush in. "Afternoon, officer," he said evenly. Hayes didn't answer right away, just leaned down, peered inside like he was inspecting contraband in human form. His eyes flicked over the leather seats, the tailored coat draped across the passenger chair, the balloons peeking from the trunk through the rear glass. Then his gaze landed on Marcus, and that thin smile curved. "You in a hurry?" Hayes asked finally, voice smooth as sandpaper. "No, sir," Marcus replied. "Funny, 'cause folks in a hurry tend to miss speed limits." Marcus's jaw ticked, but his voice stayed even. "With respect, sir, I wasn't speedin'. Cruise control set to 65. Hayes's smile sharpened. "Oh, so now you're a mathematician?" Marcus breathed slow, counted to 3. "License and registration's in the glove box. You mind if I reach for it?" Hayes chuckled low, like the question was comedy gold. "Look at you, polite as a preacher. Yeah, go ahead, big man, nice and slow." Marcus popped the glove box, retrieved the documents, and held them out steady. Hayes snatched them, gave them a lazy glance, then looked back at Marcus with a smirk that didn't belong on a man with a badge. "You from around here?" Hayes asked. "Yes, sir. Born and raised." Hayes tilted his head, eyes sliding over the Mercedes again. "That so? Funny. Don't see too many locals rolling in a ride like this unless they got extracurricular income." There it was. The dagger wrapped in a joke. Marcus swallowed the heat rising in his throat. "I own a company," he said flat, letting the words hang like cold iron. Hayes's brows lifted in mock surprise. "Do you now? And what kind of company we talking about?" Marcus stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Because the truth? It didn't matter what answer he gave. Hayes had already written the story in his head. And Marcus? Marcus was just a character in it. Hayes flipped through Marcus's license like it was a menu he didn't care to order from, smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Well, well, Marcus Daniels. Fancy name for a fancy car," he drawled. "What is it you said you do? Some kind of business?" Marcus kept his voice smooth, steady, the way you keep your hands visible in a storm. "Logistics. My company manages freight and distribution." Hayes chuckled, a low sound with sharp edges. "Logistics. Huh, big word. Sounds like something a man says when he doesn't want to explain what he really does." Marcus stared straight ahead, pulse pounding like a war drum. The old instincts stirred, the ones that whispered, "Don't push, don't break." But another voice hissed just as loud, "Why you gotta dance on eggshells just to exist?" Hayes tapped the license against the car door, slow and rhythmic, like he was keeping time with Marcus's heartbeat. "Step out of the car for me," he said finally. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Is there a reason, officer?" Hayes's smile turned razor thin. "Yeah, 'cause I said so." The words hung heavy in the warm air, carrying the weight of 1,000 unchecked egos wrapped in blue. Marcus popped the door and slid out, 6'2" of calm fury dressed in a charcoal coat, and confidence that smelled like a threat to the wrong man. Hayes circled him like a vulture, eyes scanning from polished shoes to manicured nails, pausing on the Rolex glinting against Marcus's wrist. "Nice watch," Hayes murmured. "You picked that up at the swap meet, or—" Marcus didn't bite, didn't blink. He just stood there, letting the silence say what words couldn't. "Pop the trunk," Hayes ordered. Marcus turned, slow and deliberate. "With respect, officer, I'd like to know why." Hayes's laugh was quick and sharp. "Why? Because this ain't adding up, big man. You, this car, this suit? Either you're running game or you're running dope. Which one is it?" The words slammed into Marcus like bricks. He felt heat crawl up his neck, a sting behind his eyes that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with fury. But fear was there too, coiled like a snake in his gut. Not for his life, but for the truth he'd always known. One wrong word, and this don't end on the side of the road. It ends in chalk lines. Pop the trunk. Marcus hit the latch. The trunk yawned open to reveal nothing but balloons, a box of snacks, and a folded banner that read, "Welcome home, Ava." Hayes stared, blinked. Then his smirk returned, slick and sour. "Cute. Daddy of the year." He slammed the trunk shut with a bang that rattled Marcus's bones. "Hands on the hood," Hayes barked. Marcus froze. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." The wind seemed to hush, carrying the weight of that command like a gunshot in church. Marcus moved slow, placing his palms against the sun-warmed metal, the smell of hot paint and rubber filling his nostrils. Behind him, Hayes shifted. Boots crunching gravel, leather creaking, the metallic whisper of a hand brushing steel. Marcus stared at his reflection in the glossy black hood. A man who built an empire from dust, now bent like a criminal under the sky. His jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He thought of Ava, of his mama, of every talk about keeping your head down, staying alive. And then Hayes's voice slid into his ear like oil. "See, Marcus, guys like you get a little taste of success. Start thinking you're different, untouchable. But let me tell you something, big man." A pause, the kind that drips with poison. "You'll always be just another suspect to me." The words sank like knives, twisting deep. And in that moment, Marcus knew this wasn't about a broken law. It wasn't about safety. It was about a badge and a bias. Hayes stepped back, finally, like a king granting mercy. "Sit tight," he said, striding to his cruiser with Marcus's license in hand. Marcus turned slowly, watching him go, every muscle wound tight as barbed wire. The sun burned above, mocking with its golden calm. The balloons in the trunk bobbed gently, silent witnesses to a world that still couldn't see past the color of a man's skin. The cruiser door slammed with a heavy thud, echoing across the shoulder like a warning shot. Hayes strolled back, license dangling from his fingers as if it weighed nothing, while its absence pressed on Marcus like a boulder. The officer's steps were slow, deliberate, each one dripping authority and something else, amusement. He stopped a few feet from Marcus, cocking his head like a man sizing up a stray dog. "Still standing here all calm, huh?" Hayes said, lips curling. "That's good. Calm's a skill in your situation." Marcus inhaled through his nose, counting the seconds, tasting the bitterness on his tongue. Your situation. Like his skin was a crime scene. Hayes looked down at the license, turned it over twice. "You got a clean record, Marcus. Real clean. Almost too clean." His eyes slid up, locking with Marcus's. "Makes a man like me wonder, what's hiding under that polish?" Marcus met the stare head on. His voice was low, even, but iron-edged every syllable. "There's nothing hiding, officer." Hayes smirked. We'll see about that. He moved closer, invading the air like smoke. "Step back to my car," he ordered, voice flat but pulsing with that smug thrill of command. Marcus followed, boots crunching gravel, every step heavier than the last. The sun blazed, reflecting off chrome and glass, throwing shards of light into his eyes. Behind them, cars zipped past, drivers rubbernecking at the sight of a black man lined up with law and order. Some faces curious, some indifferent, none surprised. Hayes opened the cruiser's rear door, not the front, never the front, and gestured with 2 fingers. "Hop in!" Marcus froze, heat crawling up his spine. "Am I being arrested?" Hayes tilted his head, slow as syrup, smile thin as a razor. "Not yet, but I'd sure hate to have to change that tone in your voice." Marcus's fists clenched so tight his nails bit crescent moons into his palms. He thought of Ava, waiting with her bags and that bright smile. He thought of his mama's voice saying, "Baby, make it home. Always make it home." He bent, slid into the back seat. The door shut with a heavy clack that felt like steel bars slamming on a life. Inside, the cruiser smelled of stale coffee and cold power. A cage separated him from the front, where Hayes settled into the driver's seat, laptop glowing like a judge's bench. The keyboard clacked as Hayes ran the plates, the name, the life Marcus had built brick by brick. "You got yourself a nice resume here," he said, scrolling slow. "CEO, huh? Big man with a big title." He turned, grin sharp enough to cut glass. "Tell me, Marcus, you ever get pulled over before?" Marcus's voice was gravel. "Not for breaking the law." Hayes laughed, a sound thick with mockery. "Breaking the law? Son, the law is what I say it is right now." The words hit like a gut punch. Marcus stared at the mesh barrier, chest rising slow, steady, as if controlling his breath was the last defense he had left. Hayes leaned back, arms draped over the seat like a throne. "See? I like to know the men riding fancy when their folks are still hustling for scraps. Makes me wonder if maybe you skipped a few steps." Marcus's jaw flexed. He wanted to speak, to slice that smirk clean off the man's face with truth, with fire. But he swallowed it down like poison, because he knew, out here on this stretch of road, the Constitution didn't mean a damn thing. Minutes dragged like chains. Sweat traced a line down Marcus's temple, catching in his collar. Outside, the world rolled on, families heading to lunch, kids laughing in back seats, while he sat caged, dignity shrinking in the rear view like the horizon. Finally, Hayes shut the laptop with a snap. The sound was final, like a gavel striking wood. He turned, gaze sharp with something Marcus knew too well, the hunger to remind a man exactly where the ground is. "Step out," Hayes ordered. Marcus did, slow, steady, like a man balancing on the edge of a blade. Gravel crunched under his shoes as he stood in the sun, hands loose at his sides but coiled with storm inside. Hayes circled again, slow predator steps, his shadow cutting across Marcus's like a dark tether. "You know what I think," he murmured, voice soft but soaked in venom. Marcus didn't answer. Hayes leaned in, close enough for Marcus to feel the hot weight of his breath. "I think men like you need reminding. You play king long enough. You forget who owns the crown." Hayes stepped back just far enough to let the words sink in, hands resting easy on his belt, like a man who believed the law bent with his breath. The highway hummed in the background, cars whooshing past, drivers sneaking glances, but never slowing down. Nobody stopped. Nobody ever did. Marcus stood still, heat radiating through his coat, sweat prickling the back of his neck. His heart thudded, not with fear, but with something heavier, anger coiled tight like a steel spring. Hayes let the silence stretch until it became a noose. Then he smirked. "Here's what's funny, Marcus. You don't look nervous." Marcus met his stare, voice calm but iron beneath. "Why should I be?" Hayes chuckled, low and dark. "Because out here, nervous is safe, calm." He leaned in, his reflection glinting in his own shades. "Calm makes me curious." The words dripped like oil, seeping into the cracks of reason. Marcus swallowed the fire clawing up his throat. He'd been here before, not this exact patch of asphalt, but this same ugly theater where the script never changed. Play humble, stay alive. But damn if every fiber in his body didn't scream for something else. Hayes circled again, slow and measured, boots crunching like teeth on bone. He stopped at the trunk, popped it without asking. Balloons bobbed like soft whispers against the hot air. Bright letters spelling, "Welcome home, Ava." Hayes stared at the banner, then turned back, grin slicing wide. "So, you got plans, huh? Big family moment?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's right." Hayes closed the trunk with a slam that made the balloons shiver. "See? That's sweet. Real sweet. Almost makes me want to hurry this along." He didn't hurry. Instead, he strolled to his cruiser, leaned against the hood, and pulled out his phone. Scrolled. Smirked. Time oozed like molasses, while Marcus stood roasting under a sun that suddenly felt like judgment. Finally, Hayes slid the phone back into his pocket and fixed Marcus with a look that could sour milk. "You know what your problem is?" Marcus said nothing. "You walk around thinking you're different, special. That car, that suit, that damn smile. All of it's just paint, big man. And paint peels." The venom in those words could have stripped steel. Marcus felt his pulse hammering in his ears, the sound merging with the distant roar of traffic. He thought of Ava again, her laugh, her eyes when she spotted him waiting at the curb. He clung to that like a lifeline, because right now, every other rope was fraying. Hayes pushed off the hood and moved in close enough for Marcus to smell coffee and contempt. "So here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna stand right there, nice and patient, while I decide whether you drive off or ride downtown." Marcus stared straight ahead, muscles locked in a war between pride and survival. Every instinct screamed to fight, to rip that smug smile off Hayes's face and toss it to the wind. But another voice, a colder, older voice, kept whispering, "Make it home, Marcus. Always make it home." And then Hayes did something that made Marcus's stomach knot. He reached for the radio. Static crackled like dry leaves, a low hum of potential chaos filling the air. "Dispatch," Hayes said, voice casual as Sunday morning. "Run me a secondary on Daniels, Marcus. Possible 10 to 32 suspicion." Marcus's chest tightened. 1032. Weapons. The words sliced through the heat like ice. Hayes glanced over, lips curving slow. "Just covering bases," he said, tone dripping with false innocence. Marcus didn't answer. Couldn't. Because in that moment, he knew exactly what this was. Not a stop, not a check, but a game. A dirty game where the rules shifted with the whims of a man in mirrored shades. And the worst part? Losing didn't just mean a ticket. It meant becoming a headline. The radio hissed, static, curling like smoke in the heat. Hayes leaned one elbow on the cruiser roof, voice smooth, lazy, as if this was just another day in his kingdom. "Dispatch, you got that on Daniels? Marcus Daniels. Confirm, clean." A pause, crackle. Then a voice buzzed through, "Copy that. Stand by. Stand by." Two words that stretched like a lifetime. Marcus stood rooted to the gravel, every nerve a live wire. Sweat carved rivers down his temples, stinging his eyes. His fists ached from being clenched too long, nails biting half-moons deep. Hayes glanced at him, grin coiling slow. "See? This is the part I like," he said, voice dipping low, thick with poison. "That quiet before we find out what a man's really hiding." Marcus met his eyes, calm carved from iron. "What I'm hiding?" His voice was even, but sharp enough to draw blood. "You've already decided that, haven't you?" Hayes's smile widened, thin and wolfish. "Maybe. Maybe not. Guess we'll see." The radio crackled again, sharp and loud like a gunshot. Hayes leaned in, thumb on the mic. "Go ahead." 10-4. The dispatcher's voice came clear, clipped. "Marcus Daniels, flagged as—" The voice hesitated, like even static held its breath. "Flagged as verified Level A clearance, DOJ classification, federal contractor, priority status. Do you require contact from Washington?" Silence. Not the casual silence from before. A silence that slammed like a brick wall, heavy and absolute. Hayes froze, every ounce of smug dripping off his face like melting wax. His jaw twitched, eyes flicking from the radio to Marcus, then back. "Say again?" "Confirmed. DOJ clearance active. Current status, high security clearance. Advise, do not detain without federal authorization. Repeat, do not detain." The radio went dead. Marcus didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, tall and steady, while the air turned electric. His reflection burned in Hayes's mirrored lenses, and for the first time since this circus started, Hayes looked small. Real small. The officer's throat bobbed as he swallowed, hard. "You, His voice cracked like thin ice. "You work for the feds?" Marcus let the silence hang a beat longer, savoring it like the first deep breath after drowning. Then he spoke, slow and sharp. "I told you I run logistics." He took a step closer, eyes locked on Hayes like twin barrels. "What I didn't tell you is where." Hayes blinked, shades no longer hiding the flicker of fear in his eyes. Behind them, cars whooshed by, oblivious. Balloons in the trunk bobbed gently, letters dancing in the sun like some twisted joke. "Welcome home, Ava." And in the middle of that bright, ordinary day, two men stood in a storm no one else could feel, the hum of power shifting like tectonic plates under their feet. Hayes opened his mouth, closed it. The swagger, the venom, the casual cruelty, all gone like smoke in a high wind. For the first time, Marcus smiled. Not wide, not warm, just a curve of lips sharp enough to cut through years of chains. "You were saying something," he murmured, voice silk over steel. "About crowns?" Hayes's face flushed crimson under the tan. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. He stepped back, just half an inch, but enough to speak volumes. Hayes's posture cracked like glass under heat. His chest, once puffed like a badge of power, deflated. Marcus saw it and savored it. He stepped forward slowly, the crunch of gravel louder than the roaring traffic. Every move was heavy with everything Hayes had tried to strip from him: respect, dignity, humanity. "You know what's funny?" Marcus's voice slid smooth, low. "You spent all this time trying to make me feel small." Hayes opened his mouth, stammer rising, but Marcus cut him dead with a glance. "And now look at you, shrinking. One clearance check, and suddenly the king forgot his throne." Hayes flushed, hand twitching near his belt, not for the gun, just for something solid. There was nothing. Marcus leaned in, voice sharp as steel. "You don't run me. You never did. Men like you spend your whole life proving you're bigger than the badge you hide behind. But deep down—" He let the silence finish the sentence. Hayes swallowed, fear flickering in his mirrored shades. He thrust Marcus's license forward like it burned. "Here, You're free to go. Marcus let the moment breathe, then took it with calm hands. Free to go? His laugh was low, dry. I was free the whole time. He walked to his car, each step thunder in Hayes's shrinking kingdom. The Mercedes door clicked shut like justice in stereo. One last glance in the rear view showed Hayes frozen, carved from shame. As Marcus pulled back on the highway, balloons in the trunk bobbed bright. "Welcome home, Ava!" Marcus smiled, not for Hayes, not for revenge, but for the truth burning brighter than blue lights. Dignity is a crown no man can strip away, unless you hand it to him. That night, Ava's laughter filled the car. Marcus just listened, heart unclenching mile by mile. He didn't tell her about Hayes, didn't need to. This wasn't about pain anymore. It was about power, the kind that stands tall and walks away whole.